Alvin Bragg's big bombshell audio that he was going to introduce to the jury to show that Donald Trump was in on this deal, this conspiracy to rig the election or whatever their theory is going to be, doesn't land. We had the testimony from Doug Daus, the cell phone expert, the guy who actually took this data out of Michael Cohen's cell phone. They went and got his cell phone, extracted it, and he was explaining what is inside and how it all works. Now we're going to pick back up. We're going to get into cross-examination from him to say there are some serious problems with this audio. You know, it's kind of cut off. It feels like it might be a couple different audios spliced together. We've got questions about Michael Cohen, right? He's a convicted perjurer. He's somebody who's got some delusions of grandeur. He thinks that he was going to be the AG of this whole country. I mean, that's how whacked he was. So we got questions about what did he do to create this audio and where did it come from? And so we're going to get into all of it before the testimony started because Doug Daus was back on the stand and he got cross-examined by Emil Bove to undermine really this audio tape. Alina Habba will help explain what is going on, but this is the audio that they were very excited about. The court released this. You see, this was clipped by Molly Crane Newman. This is Michael Cohen. This is Donald Trump. This is what they played for the jury in the Trump prosecution.
What you should get rid of this because it's so false what they're saying. It's such bullshit. I think this goes away quickly. I think it's probably better. Do the Charleston thing. In 2 weeks, it's fine. I think right now it's better. You know? Okay, honey. You take care of yourself. Thanks, Pam. Yep. Okay. I'm proud of you. So long. What's up, Mike?
Great poll, by the way.
Okay, so that was the first part. He was on the phone, right? So Cohen is in his office. He's recording this, and you're going to hear Trump just hangs up on the phone. And then Cohen's going to come back out, and Cohen's going to start, you know, kissing the old booty. Hey, great poll, by the way. You're amazing. I love you. And then now Trump is paying attention to him. Okay, so Trump is dealing with a bunch of stuff, just to be clear. So he just was talking to Pam, talking about the Charleston thing. That's going to get moved around. Mike, hold on. Hangs up the phone. Okay, over to you, Mike.
Great poll, by the way. Seen it. Great poll.
Making progress.
Big time.
And you guys are a good guy.
Oh, Pastor Scott?
I can't believe it. No, what's
Oh,
happening?
no. He's...
Can we use him anymore?
Oh, yeah. 100. No, you're talking about Mark Burns. We've told him
Well,
to...
I don't mean that. Mark Burns, can we use him anymore?
No.
Richard Lefrak, I'm sorry, Richard Lefrak just called. He just had, when you have a chance, he had an idea for you.
So we got served from the New York Times.
Okay, so someone else comes in. Okay, so Trump's seated there, probably at his desk. Someone else comes in. Hey, by the way, this guy just called for you. Just, you know, whatever. Okay, fine. He waves her away. Michael Cohen's still seated there. Okay, by the way, this just came in. Right, he's like dealing with a bunch of different things right now.
Regarding to unseal the divorce papers with Ivana. We're fighting it. Kasowitz is going
You
to...
should never be able to get that done.
Never. Kasowitz doesn't. They'll ever be able. They don't have a.
Give me a Coke, please.
They don't have a legitimate purpose.
And you
So
have a woman that doesn't want to unseal.
correct.
So,
You've been handling it.
Yes, and it's
But
all
that's been going on for a while.
for about 2-3 weeks now.
All you have to do is delay it for...
Even after that, it's not going to ever be opened. There's no purpose for it. Told you about Charleston. I need to open up a company for the transfer of all of that info regarding our friend David. You know, so that I'm going to do that right away. I've actually come up and
Give it to me.
I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up with
So what are we going to pay?
funding. Yes, and it's all the
Yeah, I was
stuff.
thinking about that.
All the stuff, because, you know, you never know where that company, you never know where he's going to
David
be.
gets hit by it.
Correct. I'm all over that. And I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be,
Listen, what finance?
we'll have to pay you. So,
I'll pay for cash.
no. I got, no. Hey, Don, how are you?
oh, weird. Okay, so it now ends. Isn't that curious? You heard it that last second, right? There was an audio splice. So I don't know what that was, but this is Cohen. I guess he's recording something else. Was he splicing something? It sounds like an edit to me. So there's something going on with that. We'll see if Emil Bove asks about it. Now we go into the trial. We're back on day 11. We know that the guy who extracted that audio is still on the stand. Before the day got started, Donald Trump was out explaining what the gag order means and how this whole thing is going to be working. Here is what he said.
No, it won't stop me from testifying. The gag order stops me from talking about people and responding when they say things about me. We have people saying things about me and I'm not allowed to respond. So this judge has taken away my constitutional right. And as Republican candidate and somebody that's leading Biden by a lot, I should be able to respond. But this guy's got me with the gag order. Now we're filing, I think today, a constitutional motion to get this out. We'll be filing a lawsuit on the constitutionality of it. But if somebody says something about me and I'm not allowed to respond, that's never happened before. Thank you.
All right, Mr. President, thank you for that. So that is what the president said, and this is where trial starts. And as a reminder, this all comes from Inner City Press. We'd not be here and able to do this without his incredible reporting. Says, all right, listen, Donald Trump has arrived. Blue suit, blue tie. At at the defense table talking to his lawyer, Emile Beauvais, who's going to be here cross-examining pretty aggressively here. And to his right is where Emile is sitting. Now, Todd Blanche crosses the aisle to confer with the prosecution to go have a conversation with Bragg's team, Colangelo. We'll wait for the day to begin. Door bursts open. All rise. Judge comes in. Oh, gosh, this guy. Please be seated. Clerk says, all right, this is the time set for the people of the state of New York versus Donald Trump. Indictment number, case number. Mercon comes out. He says, all right, good morning, everybody. Now, before we put the witness on the stand, I want to clarify to you, Mr. Trump, that you have an absolute right to testify at trial. I understand that there was a conversation yesterday that maybe you did not, so I wanted to be extra clear. You do. Just to clarify, the order that restricts your extrajudicial statements, your gag, that stops anyone from Trump's orbit and Trump himself talking about the fact that this judge donated to Joe Biden and his daughter raised $93 million for Democrats and works for Joe Biden. Trump can't talk about that. So the order only restricts that. And of course, that conversation would not be relevant at trial. Okay, so Trump can't talk about that at trial anyways. If Trump came out and said, this whole thing's rigged, Judge, your daughter, whatever, objection, it's not relevant. You know, Judge, I already ruled it's not relevant. I'm not recusing myself. You can't answer that question. The jury is to disregard. So Trump can't talk about it in public, in the court of public opinion, and he can't talk about it in the court of law. But he says that doesn't limit what you can say from the stand. No, of course, when in court, then they have all their rules to stop him from presenting any evidence, as we've seen. So that's why it's called extrajudicial statement, says the judge. A little snark this morning. Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche, says, all right, Your Honor, thanks for that clarification. Great. He says, well, let me be clear before we begin, Your Honor. A couple things before we start. Trump's defense says, we have evidentiary objections about the next witness. They're calling this witness in, and there's hearsay problem here. They're going to talk about a bunch of stuff that happened outside of the courtroom that we can't cross-examine. They're going to try to bring stuff other people said, you know, she said, he said type of nonsense is going to come in. And we can't challenge that. Like if they say she said something happened, well, how can we challenge that, right? And how can we confirm that's true or not? So he says Bragg's and Colangelo, Biden's prosecutors, they're trying to introduce a full transcript of the Access Hollywood tape, but they say it's only coming in to show intent, all right? Because Trump had intent. Now, Mr. Pecker already testified about this tape, and I expect there will be a witness today, probably Hope Hicks, who's going to speak extensively about the Hollywood, Access Hollywood, grab him by the purse tape. And so we don't need to bring that in, right? There's plenty of people who've already talked about this. It's cumulative, it's duplicative, it's prejudicial, Judge, keep it out. And also, Your Honor, I just want to bring up another thing. We know that in this courtroom, right next door in the Court of Appeals, that Harvey Weinstein had his case reversed for similar problems that we're seeing in this case, Your Honor. And so I think this court should take into account the Weinstein decision. He says he cuts him off. What? You mean the reversal on Harvey Weinstein? I don't think that ruling changes my view at all if they said that. He says the law of Sandoval remains the same. And remember, the Sandoval issue is in New York. It's a list of essentially prior bad acts that they can use to impeach the defendant. So if Trump takes the stand, they can say, oh, Mr. Trump, isn't it true that you were held for contempt in Areola Angeron, the Aurora Areola Angeralis? Areola? Borealis? What was the name? So we have, did you know you were held in contempt there? Did you know that Judge Chutkan issued a gag order? Did you know that you were sanctioned in this case and sanctioned in this case? So they can go through the list. And they want to add the judges in this case when he held Trump in contempt for the $9,000 we talked about earlier. They want to add that to the list. And so we're saying this is a huge problem. The Court of Appeals in Weinstein, when they did that to him, they found that was a problem. He gets a new trial. He's going back down to square one. He says, so you should reconsider. He said, what? I'm not changing anything. Todd Blanche, the defense, says, Your Honor, I have another thing, by the way. And then there's this true social issue about if you come after me, I'm coming after you. Okay. Now there's been a briefing in DC, the gag order there, but there's no proof of anything. Trump said, if you come after me, I'm coming after you. And they're like, oh gosh, that's a terroristic threat. He says, there's been a briefing in DC, the gag order there, but there's no proof that that caused any damage or whatever. And so maybe they can prove up on their other tweets, but they shouldn't be allowed to mention that, right? In other words, it sounds like Bragg is going to try to get testimony like that admitted. So if you come after me, I'm coming after you. Trump said that on his truth. He says, Your Honor, there's no proof that it caused any damages. And the judge says, are you finished, Mr. Blanche? Okay, the jury is waiting outside. Hurry up. Government says, Your Honor, can we be heard before we bring him in? Of course. The court ruled that we can already introduce a transcript of the Access Hollywood tape. So you already said we could do it, so we can do it. Now, can we do it with the photo blacked out? Because it's from the Wayback Machine. They went and got the article from the Wayback Machine. He said, well, the people have a right to establish the date when it was published. And so that sounds fine. So let's get the witness. So bring in Mr. Daus and then bring in the jury. So Dow comes in, he's back on the bench. Reminder, you're still under oath, so tell the truth. He says, okay, fine. Bring the jury in. All rise. Hi, jury. Good to see you. Welcome back. We're on day 11. They take a seat. And Trump's attorney, Emile Beauvais, is back up for cross-examination. He says, okay, Mr. Daus, I want to pick back up with you talking about these two cell phones. Now, you got the consent of my Michael Cohen when you extracted the audio from these cell phones, all these files? He says, yeah. And you signed this back on January 19th, 2023. Is that right? He says, yeah. But then you got the data on January 23rd. Is that right? So a few days later? He says, yeah. Now your unit, because he works for the government, he works for the DA's office. Now your unit didn't get the two phones under January 23rd. Is that right? So it came here and then it came here. And he says, now let's talk about the chain of custody. He says there's only one signature as a witness, not two. And that's not ideal if there's a dispute. Is that right? He says, yeah, theoretically, that's a little bit of a problem. And so we're talking about this very important concept in criminal law, very important. And typically you'll hear about it in cases like DUIs, very important concept, where you'll have multiple people handle a piece of evidence. So in a DUI case, for example, you might have one officer who does the traffic stop. Used to be the case where you'd have officers actually draw blood on the side of the road. Don't do that so much anymore in Arizona, maybe in other states. But for this example, you'd have an officer stop somebody on the side of the road. They were, allowed to withdraw somebody's blood. So they withdraw it. Maybe they hand it to someone else. That person transports the blood. So you have one person who draws it, one person who transports it. That person impounds it into evidence. And somebody from the crime lab pulls it out of evidence. Then they are the person who unseals it, uncaps the vials and does the analysis on it and then spits the numbers out. So now you think about it, like you might have three people involved in that chain. The person who drew the blood, the person who transported the blood, and the person who tested the blood. Okay. Well, any one of those people could do something kind of problematic to that in that chain of custody, right? The guy drawing the blood could do something bad. Maybe he uses an alcoholic swab on you to sort of clean you off. So there's alcohol on your body as he's puncturing you. Maybe he does that. He said, no, there's nothing in here. He does it. You don't know. So it contaminates the entire vial, contaminates the entire process. We got to be very clear on what the chain of custody is. So we're talking about that same custody and it goes from, A to B, B to C, C to D, and it's verified every step of the way. So he's getting into that with him. He says, now at every step, right, A should sign off that I gave it to B and B should sign off that A gave it to me, right? So like we can confirm both people. Yes, I gave it to you. You gave it to me. Okay, two of us. Now, if there's not two signatures on here, that's kind of weird, right? So like somebody else maybe could have just tampered with it and then handed it off to someone else. It's not ideal if there's a dispute about this, right? He says, yeah, theoretically, that's a problem. Theoretically. You'd want to have two witnesses, wouldn't you? He says, probably, yeah. Now, Mr. Daus, you work for the government from law enforcement here. So you don't know if the phone was hooked up to the internet, do you? I do not know. Now, you found a Signal app on the phone, Michael Cohen's phone, right? I did. And on Signal, isn't it true that self-delete is an option? You're familiar with Signal? Yeah. Isn't it true that self-delete, you can do that on your messages there? Yeah. And it's pretty difficult to get them once they're deleted, isn't it? He says, yeah, it is. And when you went through Michael Cohen's phone, isn't it true that Michael Cohen had his Signal messages set to self-destruct in 7 seconds? Is that right? He did. And just to be clear, 7 seconds, right? Not minutes, seconds. He did. So you read it, it's gone. Like as soon as you see it, it's gone. Now, what about the Dust app? You familiar with that? Yeah. And the Dust app, was that installed on his phone? He says, the Dust app, does that allow you to self-delete as soon as it's read? He says, yeah. And so if you, as soon as you read it, it auto-deletes, it would make it impossible for someone like you to reconstruct that, wouldn't it? He says, yes. So as soon as you open it, it's gone. And Michael Cohen had that app too, didn't he? Yeah. Now, when you're doing this analysis on a cell phone, isn't it true that if you do a factory reset on your phone, that can wipe all the data off the phone, right? He says, yeah, it can. And there was a factory reset of Michael Cohen's phone, wasn't there? In October 2016, right? He says, yeah, there was. And so where did the file come from? On January 25th, 2017, there was a backup sync. Now, you don't know what that backup entailed, do you? He says, I don't know everything, but it certainly had that file. That file came from a backup, January 25, 2017. So we're getting some timeline on this. So that's where it was stored. It was from a backup. So we don't know really where it was recorded, right? What was the date of the recording? We don't know. Maybe there's some context. Maybe you could say he's talking about this or he's talking about Charleston. Maybe he had a trip there. Maybe it's the Charleston. I think Charleston was after he was elected, the fine people, all the things. So we're trying to make some context about this, but what is the specific date? Do we know? Where'd the file come from? There was a backup. So, a backup work dumps everything on there, but does it show you the creation date? He says, well, that came from that date. Okay. And then he wiped everything also in October 2016, which is before the election. Why did he do that? Why would Michael Cohen, who's just an innocent lawyer, who's just doing Trump's bidding, why would he delete all of his evidence, use all of this stuff, right? And lawyers, by the way, who are not doing corrupt BS, don't do this, right? Trump's other lawyers, like the ones representing him on this case and stuff like that, they're logging their work. They're logging everything in their emails. This is how much time I spent on it. This is what I did. You paper your file, you log it up so everybody can see. So when you get hit with a malpractice claim, you got a ton of evidence to show I didn't do any of this. Okay, Michael Cohen went to prison. So where did this come from? He says, well, now you don't know what the backup entailed. No, I don't know, but that file was in there. So now Now, I want to talk about the September 6th file. We'll get there. But first, I want to be clear. You specifically, Mr. Daus, you did not collect Michael Cohen's laptop, did you? The laptop. You got the cell phone, but not the laptop. We did not. And that's how you could know what he loaded on, right? If you had the laptop. So there could have been, for example, a large number of the contacts on his cell phone. It could have come from the sync with the laptop. Is that true? He says, yeah, it could have come from there. Now, you know that the call was cut off, right? He says, yeah, it was. We listened to the audio. The call sounds like it comes to an abrupt end. It was cut off. He says, but how do you know it was the end of the call? He says, well, I want to bring up a defense exhibit called G19. Put that on the screen. Now, Mr. Daus, does that refresh your recollection if you're looking at that? He says, well, this was from a report, probably. It says the call, you say, came in at the end of the audio file. Is that what you said in your report right there? He has it highlighted. The call, you say, it says came in at the end of the audio file. The call came in at the end. But there's nothing on the cell phone about it, is there? No, there's not. And this photo of Michael Cohen in the White House, photo on the screen, he's at the White House. Is this the metadata? So it must be from his report, you know, location, time, date, sometimes GPS coordinates, cell phone device, camera, aperture, all that stuff. Is that his metadata? Yes. But is it true there's no similar metadata for audio files? He says there's not. So we don't know when it was recorded. Beauvais says, so we can't see that. And I think sometimes you can encode some metadata into audio files. I think you can, right? MP3s, various audio files. We have it as a recorded as an M4A. I don't know what he extracted it as, but depending on the audio file, I think you can incorporate some metadata in there. So it's kind of curious. My question is, did Michael Cohen scrape the metadata, right? Because you can go in there and definitely remove it. And so, I don't know, copy and paste. It didn't carry over. There's no similar metadata. So his point is, you can see exactly when this photo was taken, where it was taken, who took the photo, what cell phone they use, everything, but not the audio. Weird. He says, now, Mr. Daus, there was another sync in October, right? But the exhibits that we have show nothing about it. So it's true that we would have to just take Michael Cohen's word about that happened in October 2020. Now, the phone was turned on again in 2022. Did you know that the phone was turned on again in 2022? Did you look at that? Because they got a copy of the records and they had their own expert look at it. And they said, well, the phone was off for a long time. No, I did not know that it was turned back on in 2022. And did you know that Michael Cohen used it to make another recording? And you don't know what he did? Objection! Sustained. Where was that going? Michael Cohen used it to make another recording, and you don't know what he did with that. Gosh, what kind of recording? Is this when he was doing podcasts with Stormy Daniels? Oh, no. Maybe I might sustain that objection to you. The judge is like, no, man, it's about lunchtime. I need my appetite. Yeah, we're not getting into that. I'm only joking. I don't know where that was going. But Michael Cohen, he turned the phone on again, and you don't know what he did? Objection. He rewinds. So we just have to take Michael Cohen's word for it. Is that right? He says we do. We have to take Michael Cohen's word for it about when this was, I guess, created and where it came from and the authenticity, all this, right? Like who created the audio, who cut it off, where it was spliced, all of it. Guess what? We just have to take Michael Cohen's word for it. He says we do. Beauvais, that's a mic drop moment, okay? That is like masterclass on how you exit a cross-examination. Like literally mic drop. Because Michael Cohen, everybody this entire trial has been saying what a liar Michael Cohen is, what a piece of work he is. And when Michael Cohen comes out, the jury's going to hear, yeah, this dude's a convicted perjurer. This dude is a bona fide liar. And you just heard from the government's own witness that we have to take Michael Cohen's word for it. This audio is invalid because it comes from Michael Cohen, the most unreliable person in the entire state of New York, who is the star witness of Alvin Bragg and Letitia James's trial. It's incredible. Boom! No further questions. Thank you. Redirect from the government. Conroy comes out. He says, you know, Mr. Daus, you don't hang out with Michael Cohen, do you? No, I do not. And you actually saw no evidence of tampering, did you? No, I did not see any evidence of tampering. No further questions. Beauvais says, well, you saw the possibility of tampering, didn't you? And you saw that the cutoff of the file came in by a phone call, right? Now, nothing on that in the phone, right? So that's why it got cut off, right? So maybe that's what we heard. Phone call comes in and he picks up the phone. So the phone captured a bit of the audio that he was recording and it got the cutoff of the file came off by a call. Now there's nothing on that in the phone, right? He says, right. Judge Mercan says, counsel, please approach. Sidebar up at the judge's bench. Trump seated alone at the defense table. Todd Blanche, Emile Beauvais up at the judge's bench. Susan Nicholas is one seat down from Trump. They have their sidebar. They return. No further questions. We're done with this witness. Judge Mercan says, okay, next witness. Bragg and the Biden prosecutor Colangelo, they call George Longstreet, and he's a paralegal. Georgia, sorry for the misgendering. Government says, all right, Georgia, where do you work? At the District Attorneys of New York. I'm a paralegal. And have you worked on a case against Donald Trump? Yes. For about the last year and a half, I have. stuff. And what have you been doing? Collecting social media info? She says, yeah, I follow him everywhere. Yeah, I follow his tweets, which is like, what? First of all, it's called X now, and he doesn't tweet anymore at all. He tweeted his mugshot. That was it. So it's like, oh gosh. His Instagram and then his True Social. Now, how many social media posts have you saved? It says 1,500. I use Snagit and then I hash it. And did you review at Real Donald Trump on Twitter? Going back in time, I guess. So that makes sense. Yes, I did. And at POTUS 45, right? She's going back to get all the old ones. And I was thinking she was getting the new ones for contempt and stuff like that, but she's going all the way back. So it is actually Twitter. That's my mistake. She gives us some details. Yeah, I follow him at POTUS 45 when he was actually the president. And what is True Social? She says, it's like Twitter. And did you use the Wayback Machine to review previously published news articles? She says, I did. Now, including this exhibit, I have this Washington Post article, which of course is referencing the Access Hollywood tape. They start to put that on the screen. Todd Blanche, Your Honor, objection. I object to the Access Hollywood. Okay, we already dealt with this. Judge says, all right, jurors, step out for a minute. Jury gets up, they go out. Like, oh, great. Todd Blanche, the defense says, Your Honor, we'd like to discuss a stipulation about an exhibit given your recent ruling here. Stipulation meaning an agreement. So we have a decision. We've talked to the prosecutor. They say we will accept an agreement from you on admitting evidence. The example that we always like to use is this contract valid or not? Did you sign this or not? Some people might quibble about the formation of the contract. Some people will say, no, the contract, I signed that, right? And here's the thing. And then you debate about other things outside the four corners of the document. So you can just stipulate that, yes, I was driving the car. I'm going to step out for a few minutes, says the judge. Needs to probably go get some instructions from someone. Now we're back. Judge says, all right, listen, now I'm satisfied that a foundation has been laid by the witness for authenticity. So the legal assistant from the Bragg office comes back in. I clipped it. I got it from these locations. He says that's enough. So it's fine. Government says, Your Honor, you ruled that we can introduce evidence to offset Trump's claims that witnesses benefit from testifying and to explain previous denials. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And he says something. So we bring the jury back in. And remember, this paralegal is still on the stand. Government comes back and says, all right, Miss Paralegal, Georgia, we have a stipulation, or to the judge in front of the jury, they're back in. Your Honor, we have a stipulation that the Access Hollywood tape was published by the Washington Post on October 7, 2016. And we offer these exhibits. They start offering some. Trump's lawyer objects to one. Objection. Judge says noted. And then they move to admit. 407A comes in. Now, this is a video. So they actually play the video. The jury is shown the video of Trump apologizing for the tape. He says, this is a distraction. He said, I've said some foolish things. Bill Clinton has actually abused women, and Hillary has intimidated his victims. Sorry, he blames it on Hillary. It's 2016, remember. Georgia, when was this video? October 8th, 2016. It's crazy we're even talking about this stuff in the middle of this criminal trial. Hollywood. He's not charged with abusing anyone or anything. Now, when was this? October 8th, 2016. He didn't grab Stormy by the purse. October 8th, 2016. And Georgia, what's this? Oh, this is from True Social on March 15, 2023. And again, 2023, right? So now we're suddenly fast forwarding all the way forward. I did nothing wrong in the horseface case. That's Stormy. Felon, jailbird Michael Cohen. And he also said, if you go after me, I'm coming after you. So she gets those social media posts admitted. She's the person who clipped them. I did this. This is how I did it. Okay. Government, no further questions. Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche, comes up. He says, hi, Georgia. Thanks for being here today. Did you review the Twitter account of Michael Cohen? Yes. And have you reviewed his TikTok where he's doing his little live streams? She says, no. Have you listened to all of his Mea Culpa podcast? She goes, oh God, absolutely not. Probably didn't say it like that, but she says, absolutely not. So you have no independent knowledge of how True Social date stamps its posts or anything? No, I do not. Okay, no further questions. And so that is the end of the foundation of where a lot of these documents needed to come from. We needed authenticity, authentication. That has been completed. And so in our next segment, we're going to hear from Hope Hicks. But rounding out the morning segment will be Alina Habba, who's coming out to explain that we are in the middle of a political lawfare environment. And when you compare and contrast, right, we just heard this statement about Trump saying, well, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, how many agreements did they sign? Or how many people did they throw off of a bridge, in order to get him in office? A lot. So Alina's coming out and saying this is a very strange situation because Trump is being criminally prosecuted. But when Hillary had some problems with mislabeling campaign expenditures or whatever they're claiming Trump did, they just settled it with a fine with the FEC. Everybody else can just settle this. But Trump gets prosecuted for stuff that's not even criminal.
Let's talk about something else that nobody's mentioning. Hillary Clinton with the Russia hoax paid the FEC a violation for paying her attorneys to hide payments for that, okay? Now, is she in jail? No. 150% then if it's Trump, they will go after you. If it's anybody else, you pay an $8,000, I believe her fine was $8,000. How's that not a paper crime? If we're going to use this standard, it's got to apply to everybody. And you know what? That's not going to be very pretty for the American people, and that's not going to be pretty for the left-wing Democrats. They come after Trump. They're coming after America. It has nothing to do with him. It has everything to do with us. There is no campaign finance violation. In fact, that's what Michael Cohen pled guilty to. The same man that perjured himself in my attorney general case and admitted to it on the stand. We are clearly in a very much political lawfare environment. And as Americans, both Democrat and Republican, if we don't stop it, we are in trouble as a country.
Right on. Alina Habba delivering it in only the way that Alina can. And I think she's right about this, that there is a double standard. Obviously, we're watching it play out. I think they know there's a double standard. They don't care. It's just raw power at this point. The fact that we're asking them to adhere to old standards, it's like, come on, Rob, don't be so silly. That was out the window a long time ago when they decided that they could lock you down, steal your property, let other people live in your houses, force you to inject something here, you know. And then we saw that in Georgia that we had hope that maybe there was still a semblance of justice. Then we figured out that no, actually, even there, everybody's all sleeping with each other, commissioners, judges, defendants. It's wild scene everywhere. And it's just about raw power because they don't want Trump to win. So they'll do whatever it takes. And it seems like it's backfiring on them. People are sick of it. We want real justice in America so that we can just go about our lives and live normal, peaceful endeavors. So my friends, we're going to be here continuing to cover this case. Of course, thank you for subscribing and joining us wherever it is you're watching this. Thank you so much for also considering becoming a member at our members only locals community, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We do morning streams 6 days a week, including on Saturdays. We really try to deliver for our members to create a beautiful, blossoming community with the best people ever, and we have done that. So come join us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We'll see you over there and back here on the next one.